Thank you very much, Draco, as well. Very interesting questions there, and I'm going to ask a couple of those to my guests here as well, as I'm joined by Andrew Vedius Day and two of the Rift Rivals champions, BIOFROST and DOUBLELIFT. That means we talked to almost everybody on the team, or we're going to talk to you guys. I just heard from your teammates, obviously, must be a great victory, but BIOFROST, I want to go to you first. A first big victory for you also here at Rift Rivals with TSM. What does it mean to you to make it work in the end?
Well, it's my first ever win in a tournament other than NALCS, so it doesn't mean a lot. It's an international tournament, even though it's only against Europe. So it is good for TSM and I guess NA as a region as a whole, because I don't really remember the last time North America has won any international competition, so this is good.
Well, this is great. Obviously, DOUBLELIFT, same thing for you. You have got a ton of titles under your belt already, but this one, even though it is not an MSI or World Championship, it is international competition, and you guys aced the final.
Yeah, for sure. I think, for me personally, it means a lot because I'm coming back off of a split where I didn't have a lot of confidence. You know, solo queue made me a shitty player. and then the other thing was, I feel like people, they think of me and they think of like that I choked at last year's Worlds and that I play badly at international competitions, where I don't really feel that way. And so I think this was like a really big statement tournament for me, that I can compete with like the highest level, even though it's just EU, like BIOFROST said. So I feel really good, obviously.
Can we stop saying just EU?
I mean, the only competition here was EU.
I'm not sorry to say EU.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean.
Vedius,
it's just a bit of banter, of course. Like, I am just pulling this. I mean, you are a respect. Like, you had no other opponents. EU were your only opposition in this.
Yeah,
that's what he meant.
You guys have a funny analyst test,
I think
by the way.
Vedius is
There's
a
no
bit.
desk.
No, there isn't.
Yeah.
I think Vedius is just a bit upset that obviously EU did not do a lot in this tournament.
Like, NA is definitely greater than EU.
Yes.
Roman is going to have to turn his arrow around on his chest now, because TSM were able to break the curse and they were able to redeem their record against the Unicorns.
Definitely. And DOUBLELIFT, I just want to talk a bit more about your answer there, because you have spoken to your confidence level maybe not being on par in the beginning of summer, and there was this huge spotlight on TSM with you coming back. Well, DOUBLELIFT's back. Now, obviously, everything's going to go perfect. So are you happy that, you know, you're taking the steps in the right direction, obviously, with this result? Is that helping the idea that things are going well?
Yeah, the expectations on TSM are always extremely high. And then, you know, for me, there was this extra spotlight because I was coming back. And I don't know, the game is such a team game now that I can play champions like Ashe, and like I can look really good as long as I hit arrows, which previously, like, that was really not the case. Like, AD carry is a lot more team-centric role right now, and I'm not gonna lie, like, I got carried pretty hard a lot of games, like BJERGSEN and everyone on the team, honestly. Our team play was just insane.
I mean, your arrows were on point. BIOFROST, your performance was also on point. How does that kind of reflect on you or influence you, the fact that this guy has to be the star and also carry a lot in that team as well with the rest, and you guys have to perform? Is that heavy on your shoulders as well?
I think having the stress of being able to perform at every match is really good. It can also be a double-edged sword, because if you don't manage stress well, then it can be really like a fast downhill where, you know, you lose one game and the community really hates you for it, and then you like just kind of tilt and you play a lot worse for the next couple of games. But if you can manage that and be able to receive community criticism in like a healthy manner, then it can be really beneficial as well. So I think it's both good and bad.
Yeah, I think you guys should read a lot of Reddit and Twitter now after these matches, because you absolutely deserve it. Vedius, we got to turn that around, obviously, for the European teams. This was an absolute wake-up call that you said, well, it's not really underperforming when your style just gets exposed, and obviously wasn't up to par. So where did they go from here? Well,
the European teams, I think, have come to realize that their strategies, their playstyles are not as effective if they want to try and succeed at international competition. And I think it's really important to identify that, like, the European teams came in exactly as expected. Like, their styles were exactly the same. The players performed at the level that we expected, and NA just really came in and were really a cut above. Like, I thought TSM was very impressive, Phoenix One were really impressive, and like they just completely demolished Europe. And I think that moving forward, like, Europe just need to expand their styles. And I think the biggest thing is like getting a better understanding of how to build your early game leads.
I'm going to challenge you a bit on the every player coming in and playing as we expected, because we did, and you as well, had high hopes for a Caps if he would break or make it on this stage. We had players that had done well. So I feel like some of them really underperformed as well, because it's kind of easy to say, well, they all did bad, but what exactly went bad? Was it individual? Was it in lane that they got outplayed? Was it obviously the objective game?
Well, I think one of the first issues that European teams had, specifically for UOL and Fnatic, is they were very restricted in their champion pools. They were very limited. And I think the best example of that is the TSM versus Fnatic game, where the draft was pretty much perfect from the side of TSM, right? Like, I don't know if you guys knew exactly what they were going to pick every single time, but it felt like that they had an answer to everything. And the fact that Fnatic allowed the enemy team to have a champion like Caitlyn, like, that speaks to it. But also, with Caps specifically, I think one of the reasons why I didn't put him in my OP5 was simply because of experience. This was his first international event. This was the first time that he was going up against top-tier talent in the forms of BJERGSEN, Jensen, and Ryu, who are all very experienced and talented individuals. So I think that he should come away with a valuable lesson in what it's like to play against other top teams in other regions, but also like how you just playing your style is not always going to be good enough.
If we look at all the teams, DOUBLELIFT and BIOFROST, obviously we can say EU teams failed as a whole, but if you look at all three of them, which one do you see a lot of promise or can bounce back, or can they all bounce back, and what are the next steps you guys think?
I think they're all actually pretty good. Playing against each team, I can definitely feel a certain style. I think Fnatic, their bot lane needs to play meta champs, and also with regards to Caps, I think he just didn't understand that it's a really heavy engaged meta, and you can't not run cleanse versus like heavy CC comps. You can't just basically pick bad summoners or pick bad champions. Like, if you're playing Orianna, there was one game where he was just like feeding, straight feeding. And it was like, he's playing Ori versus LeBlanc, and I think Gragas, and he just disrespected Jensen so many times. And as soon as you fall behind once mid lane, you're going to continuously fall behind unless your team gives you vision. So I think it was just like more of a game understanding thing than just saying like, oh, Caps was bad, or like Caps is bad, his playstyle isn't going to work. He probably just didn't know that that could happen to him. And then UOL is obviously pretty good. They're definitely better than I expected coming in. And then who's the last team?
G2.
Oh yeah, G2. I mean G2. You can always count on G2. I don't know. I think they're gonna make worlds. They're fine.
All right, BIOFROST. On the topic of G2, obviously our three-time champions here in EU, who we were looking at so much. How do you think they can improve, and what do you think went wrong for them mainly here?
G2, I think for the most part, they have like pretty sporadic performances in the sense that, you know, sometimes they show up really well, and then that was at MSI, and then other times they kind of fall short. And I think we can rely on them to bounce back because they have like really strong players, and their fundamentals are really good. And if the meta is suited for them, or they have a really good understanding of that patch, they can be really, really strong.
Yeah, that's kind of my remark to that too, though, because we've talked to them obviously a couple of times, and a couple of weeks ago they said we don't have a good grasp on the meta yet, but in a couple of weeks, and then definitely in preparation for a tournament like this, it doesn't seem like it's something that you should be surprised by. So I don't really understand that. Do you guys have any pointers to why that could be?
I think part of that could be just like for the players, certain champion picks might not suit their playstyle, as well as like there's a certain type of playstyle that, you know, it might be around mid or it might be around bot lane, and some teams like G2 might not be very experienced with that, and that could be the reason. But being able to play like a variety of playstyles is important, I think.
Right.
But just to add to that, I think that communication is one of the big things that I see as an issue for G2 right now, simply because back when they were like extremely formidable and really terrifying was when Trick and Perks were like this unstoppable duo of like mid jungle, where we were playing a huge amount around our mid lane superstar, and we were getting a huge amount of investment into him. And when you look at a lot of the success from the North American teams, a lot of that is similar, right? Like Contracts and Jensen, the fact that SVENSKEREN invest time for BJERGSEN, right? Like that kind of playstyle is effective because it nets you an early lead, and then all you have to do is have the experience to know how to close out the game. And I think the biggest issue for European teams right now is that here in Europe, we're too used to being too passive in the early game. We trade a few kills here and there, we have a few skirmishes, but the game really starts for us at about the 20-minute mark. Whereas I feel like the North American teams, they're so used to fighting more, and they're used to being more proactive because they have to be, that they suddenly get these big early leads, and the European teams struggle to find ways back.
DOUBLELIFT, it was quite interesting to see, to look across all the teams. For instance, C9, not the best or a phenomenal early game team, but then here they did better. You guys had a phenomenal early game. You snowballed so cleanly. Is that kind of, you feel like, what tipped things over the edge for this tournament, that you guys know how to do that?
I think for me and Bio, we're super good in lane, and so we just try to use our lane advantage and matchup knowledge to snowball that into like more roams or better vision around bot. And then, you know, BJERGSEN is the best mid in the West, so he's obviously going to win his lane. And HAUNTZER, I mean, he either gets cheese level 1 and dies, or he'll win his lane. So I think, yeah, we have super strong laners, and that has very little to do with our team's playstyle, but we do try to play like smart, I think. And part of playing smart is knowing when to play aggressive. So when we get a lead, we try to turn that 1K gold lead into a 2K and so on.
Yeah, it was crazy. In the first game, you guys had an 8,000 gold lead at 20 minutes, which is insanity because every player was stepping up. We did have to pick a Rift Rivals MVP for the finals at least, and that was SVENSKEREN, our finals MVP. It was a very difficult decision. I think that was your pick, but we had EXILEH and Jad having a BIOFROST, a double-lift in there as well. Obviously, BJERGSEN and HAUNTZER are always in the mix, but I can see how it...
It's really tough, right? But just in that final series in particular, I thought SVENSKEREN had the largest impact in being able to facilitate a lot of the early leads.
Baron.
The way in which he, I mean, like, he did almost give away a Baron, but he did also make up for it by getting the Baron as well. So I think that overall, like, he's had a really impactful tournament. He's been really impressive. And you heard him in the interview with Drakos where he said, like, for him, this was also a great opportunity for him to prove that he's not just a one-trick, right?
That's double-lift giggling about.
I mean, Sven never wins 50-50 spites, so when he got the Baron steal, I was just like, am I like awake right now? Like, somebody wake me up, please.
Oh, a bit trash talk even to the own teammate.